coming up.
Why would Zhang Bin be at a fundraiser for Justin Trudeau, a Cash for Access event, even though he is not a citizen of Canada? He's a Chinese national who was unable to donate. Why would he be there?
I bet you he wanted a photo.
So, Saint-Jacques, you know that person? Yes. He was saying this morning that you were a useful idiot. I was shocked.
I don't believe you to be a useful idiot.
You've said that Ms. Fournier is wrong, the Globe and Mail is wrong, you've implied disagreements with CSIS as well, so the committee and the public is going to have to decide what they believe in terms of the facts.
And the evidence we have here from an unnamed source from Canada's spy agency is there is actually a taped conversation between Mr. Zhang, the philanthropist that you claim is simply a legitimate businessman.
Point of order, yes. Chair.
This is private, probably, I guess.
Point of order, Ms. Sachs.
I don't see how private company is relevant to this testimony.
Well, stick around and find out, Miss Sack.
This is your wake-up call.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Let me say at the outset that your assertion that Beijing diplomats were present at meetings with the foundation in the negotiation of the donation to provide translation services to the donors to be completely unbelievable. It simply is absurd. But you further stated that Millennium Golden Eagle Inc. Canada, the source of the donation, is a Canadian company in good standing. This is a shell company based out of a house in Dorval that is controlled by the China Cultural Industry Association, which is part of the United Front Work Department. Receipts were sent to Hong Kong and then Beijing to the very same address of this United Front Work Department controlled company. So do you consider this company to be one of good standing? Really?
Montreal's belief in the matter quite seriously.
Yeah, well, I don't think any Canadian who's serious about Beijing interference would view such a company to be a company in good standing, and they certainly wouldn't consider it to be a true Canadian company.
If they had wanted to interfere, I would have seen traces of that.
Mr. Trudeau, I controlled the time. I asked the questions, you answered them. Now, Mr. Chair, changing gears, on September 10th, 2015, Elise Comtois, the executive director of the Trudeau Foundation, sent an email to the executive committee hoping to quickly organize a signing ceremony on Monday, September 14th, 2015. In that email, you were specifically mentioned to represent the foundation's board and the family. This rushed meeting of a signing ceremony with the donors just happened to coincide with a time when your brother and the Liberal Party were surging in the polls, when your brother was on track to realistically become the Prime Minister of Canada, which he did a month later. That signing ceremony did not take place, and on Friday, September 11th, 2015, Natalka Harris of the Trudeau Foundation emailed you to explain that there were still outstanding issues, not between the Trudeau Foundation and the donors, but with the University of Montreal. Nonetheless, she had asked that you fly from Vancouver over the weekend to meet with the donors anyway to express appreciation for the forthcoming gift. So, did you have that meeting? Did you fly to Montreal?
I live in Montreal, so there's an inaccuracy.
At this time.
No, I don't remember that meeting. Yes, that's right. I remember watching that debate in September where I suddenly realized, oh my God, my brother's going to become Prime Minister. It was a moment I will never forget. But no, I don't remember that meeting. I must say that I can even share the emails. When the first time that Université de Montréal contacted me, there was an urgency. They wanted immediately to meet with these donors because they wanted immediately to get the money to launch $1 million scholarship at Université de Montréal.
Well, you said that you met with Zhang in June of 2014.
Correct.
How many times did you meet with Zhang after?
I met him at the signing ceremony the second time.
Okay, so you did not meet with him in 2015.
In 2015, it didn't work out. And as I say, there was great urgency in 2013 when the first email I got was that there's a great opportunity with serious Chinese, people that want to donate to the universities.
Okay.
Please meet us at your earliest convenience.
On May 19th, 2016, Justin Trudeau held a cash for access dinner in Toronto attended by Zhang Bin. Were you in attendance?
No, I was not. I heard about it like many of you in the newspapers, and it was a moment of realizing, you know what, no more academic diplomacy at the Trudeau Foundation.
Why would Zhang Bin be at a fundraiser for Justin Trudeau, a cash for access event, even though he is not a citizen of Canada? He's a Chinese national who was unable to donate. Why would he be there?
I bet you he wanted a photo with the Prime Minister to show to his friends.
A photo of the Prime Minister.
You'd have to ask him. You know what? And I have no reason to doubt that this man never tried anything that would look like interference. So as far as I'm concerned, he's an honorable man.
Nothing that would look like foreign interference, and then 2 weeks later, less than 2 weeks later, suddenly a $70,000 check to the Trudeau Foundation.
That had started in, the process of that had started in 2014. And they had wanted to get everything done very quickly at the beginning, as I was saying. They had wanted to do it with l'Université de Montréal. The Trudeau Foundation, from his point of view, was an unfortunate add-in. Here's a new prime minister. He's a rich guy. He likes being in fancy occasions. I think he wanted his photo with him.
Suddenly is there at a cash for access.
Do you think he discussed policy?
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
I know that you are interested in China. Where did that interest come from? 2005, Jacques Hébert, who had written Deux Innocents Chine Rouge, it essentially stated that China was poor, problematic, but wait, China will become something significant. 2005, Shanghai, they wanted to publish this, and they wanted to read about what foreigners had written on them. And so they had it translated. They invited Jacques, and they asked me, son of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, to write the preface. Did you go many times? I went once or twice a year for about 10 years after 2005. Did you ever go with Monsieur Chrétien? No. I know that he liked China. Well, my type of trip was not the same kind of trip that leaders do. I like to travel China and observe things that are not easily seen during a high-level trip. Did you meet with the Chinese consulate in Toronto or in Montreal or elsewhere in Canada? I went to an event with a lot of politicians at the National Arts Centre to commemorate the anniversary of ties between Canada and China, I believe. So there were diplomats present. Did you participate at any meetings like that in China? I have many friends that are Canadian diplomats in China. But Chinese officials, I have met some in China. So Saint-Jacques, you know that person? Yes. He was saying this morning that you were a useful idiot. I was shocked by him saying that. Clearly he didn't read my book, or he would have seen that I had a very nuanced approach. It is the Journal de Montréal, after all. It's not the best source for serious information. I'm not sure that Guy Saint-Jacques said that. If so, then he should talk to me. Because it's unfair. I wrote a very serious book on the Chinese people. I'm not an apologist for the Chinese government. I understand that the government is an imperial government. So you know Mr. Saint-Jacques. I know him. I know his reputation. Have you met him? Probably.
Very much. I'm going to go back to the issue of governance. Certainly, the questions that you've heard today, the allegations that have been made at committee, the confusion around what's been written policy. The former president, Pascal Fournier, stated that when she came on, she had to institute a bunch of written policies. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. And prior to that, there wasn't any?
There was some, but we needed more policies. That's for sure.
Would you agree that that's a bit strange, given the types of people, the caliber of people that were on the board, that they didn't have like basic written policies on some of this stuff?
No, part of these policies were about a natural evolution of, when the board started. Would we have had a policy and when you're building on sexual harassment or these kind of things that are germane to academia? But
specifically, to get into specificity, around the political risk that the board was carrying with a former prime minister and his son, who is a current politician, became leader, became prime minister, and a brother. That there was no policy around that strikes me as unusual.
All my colleagues know the type of relationship I have with my brother, which is a fraternal one.
Sure. But the public doesn't.
The public doesn't, which is another reason why I'm happy to be here.
And
they probably would never believe me that my brother and I'm one of the few adult people in this country who can offer him a world outside of politics.
Fair enough, but you'd mentioned something. It was the questioning from the Conservative member that talked about the cash for access, and you said there was a moment of realizing that there should be no more
academic diplomacy.
Academic diplomacy.
At least not with China or...
So when that happened, did you text your brother, reach out and say, we may have crossed the line here?
No, I never... there is one exception, but I do not discuss public affairs with my brother. I never do. I don't by text, not when I meet him.
On the run-up to this, you never...
On the run-up to this, we do not discuss...
Any of his advisors from the PMO? Did anybody advise you in preparing for this?
I have no contact with the PMO. I haven't for the duration of his government.
Okay.
Except lawyers from the PMO once asked me about joint property, but this is a private matter.
And I want to give you the opportunity as it relates to CSIS. Yeah. I'm assuming if you're under investigation, what have you, like at any point in time, did anybody outside of the foundation flag for you that the foundation might be a target of foreign interference?
No, and if again, as Mr. Rosenberg said yesterday, if there was someone who could be briefed on that at the time, it would be him. It's again why I doubt the veracity of that report.
Now you've talked about your nuanced book, your appreciation, your understanding on China. We've spoken about the China Cultural Industry Association, which when you go to their website and you look, like it has the founder of Alibaba, one of the richest people in the world on
Evergrande, yeah.
Right? Evergrande's probably another conversation for another time, but did you do due diligence? Did you know with whom you were dealing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Were there reports to the board?
And let me go back to academic diplomacy.
Just wait. No, sir, I got 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you, were there reports to the board on the due diligence that was taken on this particular donation?
No, to Morris is what I discussed. I said, look, this is...
Would Morris have provided in writing any documents that would have provided an analysis of due diligence on one of the most significant gifts?
No, it wasn't a significant gift. There were more significant gifts.
Sure, but it's still significant. $200,000 is significant.
And at the earliest onset of the gift, this was about opening up academic diplomacy in the view.
In your time and your background work on your book, you would have been aware of the Confucius Institute, would you not?
I have.
And you're aware of the allegations, or at least some of their public statements, that they were actually a propaganda arm of the Chinese government?
Especially more recently, absolutely.
But at the time, even, they were pretty controversial.
Well, again, they're similar to... China has a long way to go on civil society organizations.
Where I'm getting to, sir, is that I don't believe you to be a useful idiot. I think that if you're somebody who's taken the time and understanding to know the culture with whom you're dealing, I do think, I'll still state, and I stated this to Mr. Morris Rosenberg, it is the West's naivety that they will engage in China and somehow change China and not the other way around that I think has gotten us to this place. But again, that's a political statement, not one that's germane to interference. If you knew that the Confucius Institute had these criticisms, you knew that the Chinese government has an active way of using this type of cultural influence, academic influence, why were you not better prepared at the board level, given the nature of the foundation, given the fact your brother, is a prime minister? Why was there not more duty of care at the board level to safeguard yourself against this?
As I say, I was more involved earlier, and then I barely heard about the Chinese donation until it was time to sign it at whatever that date was, and it happened in 2016. Morris had and still has my complete trust as someone, a high-level civil servant who knows how to manage these things. So I felt that we were in good hands.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. I know there's sort of a conflict of facts that's become evident through your testimony. You've said that Ms. Fournier is wrong, the Globe and Mail is wrong. You've implied disagreements with CSIS as well. So the committee and the public is going to have to decide what they believe in terms of the facts. I've read your book on China, and I know you've done a lot of thinking about China. And what I find particularly unbelievable in your testimony are two things. The first is that foreign donations skyrocketed to the Trudeau Foundation as soon as your brother became prime minister. The allegation isn't that the foundation was taking policy positions, but that people were donating to the foundation with the intention of currying favor with the prime minister as a result. Even without all the other facts, it seems on face of it suspicious that there was a spike in foreign donations, a massive spike as soon as the prime minister took office, and yet it seems like you're contending that was coincidence. But the second thing from what you're saying, we're talking about different meetings. People are coming to those meetings who are from the consulate, who are affiliated with United Front-backed organizations, and you're saying in every case they're probably just there for translation. The implication of your comment, sir, is that there aren't qualified translators available in this country who aren't affiliated with the Chinese government, or that it's somehow normal for apolitical Chinese people in Canada to go to the Chinese government for assistance with translation services. Isn't that unbelievable?
Two questions there I saw. One, for the spike in foreign donations, there was no spike in foreign donations. We had a new chair come in at that time, coincidentally, John McCall McBain, a very wealthy, philanthropically inclined gentleman who happens to live in Switzerland and made a sizable donation. That was the extent of the spike of our board chair, of prominent and highly respected Canadian who
I think the numbers will show something different.
The generous donation, that's the spike, and it has nothing to do with politics. Your second question, I believe, was
your contention about
China
translation
works that way, that the notion of
we're not talking about China, we're talking about Canada. We're talking about the idea that if you need a qualified translator between English or French and a Chinese language, that it would be normal for people to go to the consulate or clearly United Front affiliated organizations and ask for help with translation. Isn't that absurd?
I don't even know whether these were translators, but I'm saying you have to take that in account into your understanding of how Mr. Zhang Bin operated as a non-English speaker, non-French speaker.
The issue is you had people from the consulate who were there. You had people from these Chinese government-affiliated organizations
from other countries at at moments. It's a good thing to do academic diplomacy.
This isn't just any other country, sir, and this didn't
at this
trigger.
Time in 2015-16, China was not the hard place it has now become. And we were not on our guard in the same way. No one was. Even our CSIS agents will report that.
Yeah,
things have changed a great deal.
I think it's fair to say that there has been a shift, but I think there were many people that were aware and had concerns. You've also taken a lot of speaking engagements personally with Confucius Institutes in Canada. I wanted to ask, have you been compensated for any of the work you've done with Confucius Institutes?
I think I spoke once at the Confucius Institute as a sidebar event because I was in first of all, I'm a reader of Confucius, so the Confucius.
As am I, and the Confucius Institutes have nothing to do with the work or
Chinese
legacy of
culture
Confucius.
is.
But can you answer the question though? Were you compensated for any of that work you did?
I don't believe I was.
Institutes?
No.
Okay. Have your film production companies ever received funding from individuals or institutions in China that are China based?
I think I received in terms of, my book was translated into Chinese, and I received payment from a Chinese publisher, quite modest, frankly. But so I have, sold things into China, namely my book. My films, I never made a film that was sold.
Have you had Chinese government affiliated institutions based in China fund your work at any point?
No.
Okay. You said in your book, yes, I still occasionally defend the CCP. For one thing, China, I don't think China could have come so far so quickly without the unity and organizational power that it provided. Do you still believe that?
That's the key point to understanding recent Chinese history, that the Chinese was China, and you need to compare China to China, really, to do proper analysis of China. And the unifying principles, especially after, as I say, the Deng Xiaoping period, caused by...
Do you still believe that contention, though? Does that still reflect your
Do I believe
worldview?
that the Chinese government made considerable economic achievements? I do, yes. In a certain period.
Do you think that the CCP, that China could not have progressed without in this way without the unity and organizational power provided by the CCP? That's your argument in the book. Do you still believe that?
Please.
That's sort of there's a hypothesis. It's hard to know, but I think one have to state in a positive sense that the organizing principles of the Chinese Communist Party had made a significant economic impact on the country. Correct, yes.
You've represented the foundation during meetings? Not often, but it has happened. Have you met Lagacan in Paris? No. Lagacan? Yes, in Ottawa, maybe 10 years ago, when he created his center. So no, he has no ties with the foundation. No. You know David Johnson? Yes. Since I was a child. He's a very knowledgeable man who is interested in great many things, including China. What is your relationship with him? I met him when I was young. He was a friend of my father. We used to ski together, but he's a great Canadian. I know his daughters. He's a friend of the family. So you have a bit of a proximity with Mr. Johnson. Not recently, but in the past when I was younger, yes. We went skiing together. Earlier, you talked about an independent committee in order to shed a light on the situation, the governance structure, and the management crisis. Mr. Johnson often says that he is independent, but is it the same kind of independence or the same type of proximity? Apologies. You want me to comment on Mr. Johnson? You talked about an independent committee for verifying the diligence, but the criteria, the committee wanted to create the mandate for the investigators legally and to be independent. They can't be linked to that. Yes, and you'll see that in the brief from the meeting. Is Mr. Johnson independent as a rapporteur? You're asking me to give my opinion on government decisions, which I haven't followed. David Johnson, to me, is a Canadian who is beyond all doubt. He's very honorable, not only in title. I think that this country can trust him at all levels for any task.
It is our position, is my position as New Democrats, that there be an independent public inquiry into foreign interference. I'm to take it, sir, that you're here today in some regard to protect the family's legacy and the foundation. And I'm wondering if you would be open to, should there be a public inquiry, that the things that have transpired here be handed over to a public inquiry, much like the Rouleau Commission, which I think provided a really good framework, to perhaps take that forensic audit into the foundation to assure the public that at no time was the foundation used as a vehicle to influence the Prime Minister. Would you be open to that?
Look, I'm not a decider at the foundation currently. I'm not on the board. So
I'm asking you as somebody who's there as a member
as I've said all along,
of the
I think
family.
any efforts to at some point I am here today to say we're wasting our time on the notion of interference. I have seen no trace of it.
But
I don't think there was
unfortunately,
a
that's not up for you to decide,
Correct,
sir.
correct.
And
But-
unfortunately, when it comes to things like interest and conflict of interest, pecuniary interest, it's as much as the perception as it is the reality. And I'm going to take you at your word. I'm going to take you, at your testimony here today that you have an interest in clearing the air about this. So
I
I'll
want
put
to
it to
defend
you,
the foundation, for sure.
and in fairness to your family, I would imagine you would want to defend the legacy of your father, who's now been brought in to this really murky world.
My father, I think his legacy is elsewhere than all of this, in many ways. So I'm here because, as I said, I think this is a great distraction for the important mission of the foundation.
Okay.
And
So would you be
efforts
open
to
to an
bring clarity
independent-
to it, I can only welcome, frankly, of all forms. I think, but I'm not a decider of these things.
Sure.
I know the board is launching an independent inquiry, as was the goal for these last weeks, which brought the squabble about that we're talking with. And I know the chair of the board asked the Auditor General to look at our affairs. So the opportunity, I'm not a lawyer either, but the courts may be a place to deal with this as well. The courts are truly impartial. This is a political forum, we'll have to understand. Everyone here has an agenda. So it's not necessarily the best place to get at the truth, but
Thank
I
you,
want the truth to come out, for sure.
Mr. Trudeau, your claim that you have a fraternal relationship with your brother is not entirely accurate. You helped in your brother's nomination race in 2008, his leadership campaign in 2013. You were extremely important in that campaign. And before your brother left for China in 2016, he read your book. And 5 days after he returned from that trip, he showed up at a promotional event with you for your book. In those circumstances, would you agree with me that the two wealthy billionaire Chinese nationals with direct links to the communist regime influencing you was directly influencing the Prime Minister?
No, I disagree with those qualifications entirely. I didn't play an important role in 2013. I wasn't involved in 2013. I helped my brother at the very beginning of 2012 when he had an embryonic team, and I helped in a very fraternal way.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. Thank
Okay.
you. Just want to confirm a number of points. I'm doing some cleanup here. You only signed one donation in the foundation's history, the now infamous $200,000 from the Beijing regime, correct?
I think we've gone over this time and time again. I've
So
even told the
answer
committee
is
why
yes?
we signed.
That answer is
why I
yes.
signed.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. You didn't question the tax receipts being sent to ultimately China, did you?
I explained that tax receipts being sent to China because the donor was a Chinese citizen raises no confusion or red flags at any level.
In fact, you said that, and I quote your words here, that the Millennium Golden Eagle International was a legitimate business operating in Canada. But if you exercise your due diligence, which you claim that you did, and the board did, and your organization did, you would have realized that the corporate address for this multinational corporation was in the Montreal suburb of Dorval. Probably a 4,000 to 5,000 square foot mansion, a very large home with a pool and a basketball court. Were you aware of that?
I would challenge your understanding of
Were
the
you aware
corporate
of that,
world
yes
of
or no,
Canada.
sir?
There's nothing. The corporate address of my film company is an Art
Sir,
Deco
were
home
you aware
on Pine
of
Avenue.
Were you aware of the
I was
facts
made
that I
aware
just
of that,
presented?
and there's nothing
Thank you.
there.
Were you further aware that the address that this company listed in Hong Kong, where the original receipt went to, actually doesn't exist? That a reporter from the Globe who actually attended Hong Kong went to the address trying to make some inquiries about the operators of this company. The person who answered the door had no idea. Were you aware of that, sir?
No, I wasn't aware, but I know corporate addresses are fairly irrelevant, frankly, for the nature of ownership, for the nature
Thank
of
you.
taxes.
Thank you. Everything is irrelevant. I get it. You didn't question the urgency of providing the donation around major political events for your brother, the Prime Minister, did you?
Sorry, repeat the question?
You did not question the urgency of providing the donation around major political events for your brother.
No, because there was an urgency long before my brother was in politics.
You never questioned the intention of the wealthy billionaires linked directly to the communist regime who were highly interested in the scholarship of the Trudeau Foundation. You did not question that.
They were not interested in a scholarship of the Trudeau Foundation. It became a condition for them to do their work at the Université de Montréal.
You said you expressed some concerns about the Globe story. You talked about it being simply intelligence. My former background as a Crown attorney, I rely upon evidence when I present a case. And the evidence we have here from an unnamed source from Canada's spy agency is there is actually a taped conversation between Mr. Zhang, the philanthropist that you claim is simply a legitimate businessman, and an unnamed commercial attaché at one of China's consulates in Canada discussing the possibility of your brother defeating Stephen Harper's Conservatives, forming the government, and furthermore, and more damaging, is instructions that Beijing would reimburse him for the entire amount of the donation to the Trudeau Foundation. You dismiss that simply what? As hearsay?
Well, the facts are wrong. There was never any question of $1 million donation to the Trudeau Foundation.
No, $200,000. Let's be more specific.
But the report in the Globe and Mail says $1 million. So when the facts are wrong, and you haven't seen the evidence, and I won't, so I will reserve judgment.
The consulate who interfered with the family of a sitting Conservative member in this Parliament and threatened that member, you think that consulate should be expelled immediately?
Very quick
I'm
answer,
not aware
please.
of the facts of all that, so I'm not going to pronounce myself on it.
You don't read the papers?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brock.
There's been some, I would say, unfortunate characterizations about media reporting that you've made, whether it's the Journal de Montréal as not being a credible source for news or the Globe and Mail. We know that a member of Parliament, Michael Chong, his family was intimidated, targeted for intimidation at the behest of Beijing. And it's a fact, whether you've had the opportunity to read it or not. Do you think that the consulate officials who orchestrated this campaign of intimidation should be expelled?
Look, I'd have to read the facts more carefully, and frankly, I'm not a public official, and I'm not even editorialized. I will grant you that there are the risks of China doing malign interference in this country grow by the day and should be taken very seriously. And I believe everyone in the committee does take it very seriously. And I trust, frankly, the government, not just the political government, the civil service, to act in accordance with all the rules.
Have you ever organized any political fundraisers for your brother? Since he ran for a nomination, was first elected in a general election.
In the early days, I was doing a lot because he had like a staff of 2. Did I do any fundraising? I hosted one at my house, yes. Maybe when he was deputy, I got some friends together, and yes, I did do some.
You were named an executor for your father's estate, that's correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And do the assets include book rights, royalties through a numbered company? Is that correct?
In some manner, there are book rights, yes.
Do you have control over the numbered company?
I do have control, yes. Well, control. I'm the president of it.
Okay. Did you or Justin Trudeau? Do you have? You're the president. Who has the? What are the interests there? Like, what's the breakdown between you and your brother?
My father, because he worked at a law firm for the last 20 years of his life, was surrounded by fiscalists, and there were a lot of companies, and over the years we've slowly wound them down. There's one left, which includes some real estate holdings, book rights, and it's barely operational, but it does continue to exist.
Point of order,
yes.
Chair.
This is private, probably, I guess.
Point of order, Ms. Sachs?
I don't see how private company is relevant to this testimony.
Well, stick around and find out, Ms. Sachs, and I'll keep questioning the witness, and you can
Hang on a
try and
sec.
interrupt, I
So
suppose.
we went through this yesterday. Unless there's something,
Pardon me?
unless there's something procedurally
Your interruption is
within
not
the
helpful,
standing
Ryan.
orders.
As are you. What are you doing here?
Can we have some, just hang on, please, both, okay? So we're almost done here, but as I mentioned yesterday, unless it's something procedurally within the standing orders, members have the right to ask the questions that they want to ask. There's nothing in Ms. Sachs's intervention to me that is against the standing orders, and we're going to continue with Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett, you have 27 seconds left, so go ahead, sir.
Throughout the testimony that we've had today, we're very sure about some things, and then when we talk about things that actually do speak to the foreign interference, whether it's the reporting, CSIS has a wiretap that confirms that this was an influence operation. That's something that you say you don't know anything about. The Hong Kong address of these donors that matches that of the Chinese Cultural Industrial Association, that's something that you don't know anything about. And you say that the redemption for these folks is that they have a bank account. Well, drug dealers have bank accounts, sir, and that doesn't mean that they're running reputable businesses.
Mr. Barrett, your time is done. I'm going to give you a second to address that if you like, Mr. Trudeau.
There's a lot of innuendo and misinterpretation. I don't think I need to address it.
Okay.